I was a child growing up in Canada, I was never really sure that this is what I wanted to do as a profession. I had a pretty ordinary childhood. I liked to play outside, riding my bike, playing sports. I particularly enjoyed playing video games, which back then in the 80s were a bit different than they are now. My parents really encouraged me in maths and science, and by the time I got through high school and into university, that gave me a lot of opportunities and options. Hi, I'm Robert Zlot, and I'm a robotics research scientist. I first came to Australia in 2007, and that was after completing a PhD program in the US, which is really where I learned how to be a researcher and a lot of what I know about robotics. The CSIRO field robotics group, they're internationally known, and I was aware of the research that they were doing. Zebedee is a 3D laser mapping system. It's a device that you can hold in your hand, walk through an environment, and it will capture measurements of the environment as you go. Originally, we were looking at how we can take a laser scanner, which was much larger than the one on Zebedee, and have it continuously moving while on a vehicle that's driving around, and still build maps without the vehicle having to stop to take measurements. The big issue was, how can we downsize the technology from an autonomous vehicle to something that a person walking or crawling or climbing through a cave can carry with them. So we started to look at these smaller laser scanners, and we thought, well, you can kind of wave it around like a torch and paint the lasers effectively onto the cave surface. And obviously, if you're doing this for hours on end, you get very tired. And that's when we thought of this idea of putting a spring on it. The device up here at the top of Zebedee is a laser scanner. And how it works is it fires an infrared laser pulse inside it, and that fires about 40,000 times every second. And inside there's a mirror that spins around 100 times per second, and that deflects the laser to various surfaces around the environment. And every single pulse that it makes is actually taking a measurement of how far away that surface is. It's using a principle called time of flight. Time of flight means that if you measure how long that pulse takes to come back to the laser, you can use that time to work out how far away that surface is, because you know what the speed of light is. And you need to measure that time so precisely, because if you're off by even 1/1,000,000th of a second, you'll be off by 300 meters in your measurement. The type of maps that we produce are called point cloud maps. Point clouds just means it's a collection of point measurements. So if you consider a single surface in the environment, we'll have a lot of dots that represent that surface. The processing software can process the data faster than it's collected. So if we collect a data set that takes 15 minutes, we can process it even faster than that. And that also means if we wanted to, we can actually build the map as we're walking with the device. It just doesn't work that way right now. Mathematics is fundamental to so much of research in computer science and robotics. You might think that computers can do all of this for you, but we're trying to develop new things, the next generation of what computers can do for you. If you think about all of the software and the programming that goes into it, a lot of that is mathematically based. Generally, programming itself has a lot of math behind it. Specifically, we're doing a lot of modeling of geometry and spatial math, including trigonometry, calculus. There are things called transformations and rotations. The laser scanner on Zebedee is measuring ranges around the environment. And ranges in themselves, they don't tell you sort of where things are relative to each other. In order to do that, we need to know the angles that each measurement is taken at, and also the position where it's taken. Calculus is a very important subject that is integral to how the software works for processing the data. What we really want to know is exactly where the scanner was at what time and what orientation it was facing. And in order to do that, the analysis for that looks at how infinitesimal motions of the scanner would affect where the measurements are in the world. So if you think about it, it's how small changes in X affect Y, which is your map. So a lot of the software is using calculus at the core to try to do that analysis and minimize sort of the errors in the measurements that we're taking. One user locally here in Australia is the Queensland Police Service, and they've been using it for crime scene forensics. So after a crime occurs, they can actually take a Zebedee scanner into the scene, collect the data, and they can use that for further analysis and measurements of the crime scene. A firm understanding of mathematics is becoming more and more important in today's workplace. computers can do a lot of autonomous processing, crunching numbers together, but it's really the creative aspect of developing the next generation technology that requires an understanding of the mathematical principles and a way to do new things that computers can't do yet. You might be looking at part of your math curriculum and wondering, how is this particular thing useful? And you may not know the answer to that, and your friends may not know the answer, and your teacher may not know the answer. But in 10 or 15 years from now, you might be working in a job and a new problem comes along that you haven't seen before, and then suddenly you remember back that you have the tools for this. There is something that you've learned that you haven't used in a few years that's completely relevant to solve this.